Not everyone you meet is gonna like you. It stings, doesn't it? No one likes facing that uncomfortable truth. It's like a small punch to the ego. But here's the reality. Coming to terms with this can be incredibly liberating. Yes, it hurts to realize you're not universally adored. We all crave validation. And discovering that someone doesn't see us in a favorable light can leave us questioning everything. However, understanding this truth is the first step toward clarity and peace. Have you ever caught yourself wondering if someone's friendly facade hides a deeper disdain? Maybe it's a gut feeling, or perhaps it's in the way they interact with you. Something feels off, yet you can't quite put your finger on it. This is where psychology becomes your secret weapon. Think of it as a magnifying glass for human behavior, revealing patterns and signs that can help you discern what's really going on beneath the surface. Recognizing when someone secretly dislikes you isn't about pointing fingers or feeling bad about yourself. It's about clarity. It's about deciding how to approach the situation, whether that's having an honest conversation or choosing to distance yourself for the sake of your peace of mind. So, let's dive into it together. Let's uncover the subtle signs that can reveal someone's true feelings. You might just find the clarity you need to move forward with confidence and self-assurance. They remain cold and detached in your presence. Think about the last time you truly connected with someone. Was there a genuine smile, shared laughter, or even a kind word exchange? Positive rapport between people is often built on these simple yet powerful moments of connection. It's no surprise that when someone truly values your presence, they let it show through these small, heartfelt gestures. But now, let's flip the script. Imagine encountering someone who is cold and detached every time you're around. This is the polar opposite of what's called positivity resonance, a concept in psychology that describes the magic that happens when two people exchange positive feelings, amplifying their shared happiness. When someone secretly dislikes you, this magic is noticeably absent. There's no shared laughter, no words of encouragement, and no warmth. Instead, the person in question might engage in surface-level small talk, showing no more emotion than what's absolutely necessary. Polite formalities become their shield, a way to maintain distance without revealing their true feelings. You might wonder, could they just be shy? It's a valid question. After all, not everyone is quick to open up, and sometimes emotional detachment can stem from personal insecurities or a reserved personality. But let's be real. While shyness is a possibility, consistent coldness and detachment often hint at something deeper, especially if it's directed at you but not others. Their lack of warmth might leave you feeling confused or even second-guessing yourself. But here's the truth. Someone who repeatedly avoids forming a deeper connection with you is sending a message, whether they intend to or not. It's an unspoken sign that they might not value the relationship as much as you do. So, how do you navigate this? Start by observing patterns. One detached interaction doesn't define a relationship, but repeated coldness is worth noting. And most importantly, give yourself permission to let go of the need for everyone's approval. Relationships thrive on mutual respect and connection, not forced interactions. In the end, emotional detachment and coldness are rarely a good sign, but they can also be a valuable indicator of where you should or shouldn't invest your energy. Remember, you deserve connections that feel natural and uplifting, not ones that leave you questioning your worth. Their body language is closed off. Picture this. You're in a conversation with someone, and instead of engaging openly, they sit with their arms crossed, their body slightly turned away from you, and their responses limited to polite nods or brief acknowledgments. Does it feel off? That's because body language often tells the story words leave unsaid. Psychology has long emphasized that our nonverbal cues, our posture, gestures, and eye movements communicate volumes. When someone's body language is consistently closed off, like crossing their arms or avoiding your gaze, it can reveal discomfort or even an underlying aversion. Let me share a story. I once had a coworker, Jim, who always seemed aloof when we talked. Each time I approached him, his arms would fold defensively across his chest, his gaze would wander, and his responses were minimal at best. Over time, I began noticing a pattern. Jim's body language shifted significantly when interacting with others. Around them, he was animated and expressive. With me, a wall of polite indifference. Initially, I brushed it off as coincidence, maybe even a result of his mood that day. But repeated observations made it clear. Jim wasn't comfortable around me. His actions weren't just a one-off occurrence, they painted a consistent picture. Despite his courteous words, his body language spoke louder, conveying a lack of ease in my presence. Here's the thing. Body language is a powerful indicator, but it's crucial to consider the broader context. One instance of crossed arms or averted eyes doesn't necessarily mean someone dislikes you. People might exhibit closed-off gestures for various reasons, like stress, fatigue, or even shyness. However, when these behaviors become a pattern specifically directed at you, they can reveal a deeper truth about the relationship. So, what can you do? Start by observing carefully. Are these gestures consistent across multiple interactions? Do they display the same behavior with others, or is it uniquely reserved for you? Once you've identified a pattern, decide whether it's worth addressing. Sometimes the issue might stem from a misunderstanding that a heartfelt conversation can resolve. Other times, it might be best to accept the distance and focus your energy on more meaningful connections. At the end of the day, body language is a silent but powerful communicator. Pay attention to it, but don't let it be the sole factor in your judgment. Relationships are complex, and every interaction deserves a thoughtful and nuanced approach. Remember, your time and energy are valuable. Invest them in connections that uplift and inspire you. They don't invite you to group events. Imagine there's a party happening. Everyone from your friend group is laughing, dancing, and enjoying themselves. But you weren't even invited. That stings, doesn't it? It's not just the absence of an invitation. It's the subtle yet unmistakable message behind it. When someone doesn't invite you to group events, whether it's a casual dinner, a birthday celebration, or even a simple coffee gathering, it often boils down to two possibilities. Either they deliberately chose to exclude you, or perhaps even more hurtful, you didn't even cross their mind. The first scenario hints at active dislike, while the second signals indifference. Either way, it's a clear indication that their feelings towards you aren't as strong as you might have hoped. But before you let your mind spiral, let's take a step back. It's essential to remember that not every exclusion is personal. Sometimes there are misunderstandings or perhaps logistical reasons like limited space or a last-minute decision. That said, if this becomes a recurring pattern, a party here, a dinner there, and you're consistently left out, it's worth considering that their omission might be intentional. So, what does this mean for you? First, it's okay to feel hurt. It's human nature to seek connection and validation, and being excluded can feel like a direct hit to your self-worth. But here's the empowering part. Exclusion doesn't define your value. Not being invited doesn't mean you're unworthy. It simply means that particular person or group isn't prioritizing you in their social circle. Instead of dwelling on the why, focus on the what now. What can you do with this realization? You could choose to address the situation directly, asking for clarity in a non-confrontational way. For instance, "Hey, I noticed I wasn't invited to an event. Is everything okay between us?" Sometimes an honest conversation can reveal a misunderstanding or mend a strained relationship. Alternatively, you might decide it's not worth the effort. Not everyone is meant to be your person, and that's perfectly fine. Instead of fixating on those who exclude you, channel your energy into relationships that genuinely uplift and celebrate you. Plan your own activities, invest in friendships that reciprocate your efforts, and above all, remind yourself that your worth isn't tied to someone else's guest list. The truth is, being left out doesn't feel good, but it can be a powerful teacher. It helps you discern who truly values your presence and where your energy is best spent. And sometimes, not being invited is a blessing in disguise, giving you the space to find joy in other places and with people who truly see your worth. So the next time you're not on the guest list, take it as a chance to celebrate yourself, because the best parties are the ones where you feel truly welcomed. They avoid eye contact. Have you ever heard the saying, "The eyes are the windows to the soul"? It's a poetic way of highlighting just how much emotion and intent can be conveyed through a simple gaze. But here's the catch. Those same eyes can also reveal when something's not quite right in your relationship with someone. Eye contact is more than just looking at someone. It's a powerful form of nonverbal communication. It conveys respect, interest, and even affection. So, when someone consistently avoids meeting your gaze, it might be signaling something deeper than mere shyness. Psychologists often point out that avoiding eye contact can be an unconscious behavior tied to discomfort or emotional detachment. It's a subtle way of creating distance, an instinctive reaction that can indicate unease or even dislike. They may quickly look away when you catch their gaze, or worse, they may avoid looking at you altogether. These actions often feel jarring, especially when compared to interactions where mutual eye contact fosters connection and understanding. To make sense of this, consider the bigger picture. If you're chatting with someone who constantly averts their eyes, it's worth reflecting on whether this is a consistent behavior. For instance, do they exhibit the same avoidance with others, or is it unique to their interactions with you? This distinction is key. While shyness or cultural norms can sometimes explain a lack of eye contact, persistent avoidance directed solely at you might suggest something more personal. Let me share a quick example. Imagine a colleague who during meetings effortlessly engages in eye contact with everyone else, but becomes visibly uncomfortable when it's your turn to speak. Over time, you notice this behavior repeats in casual conversations too. While they might maintain polite words, their eyes consistently avoid yours, creating a sense of emotional distance. It's these repeated moments that can speak volumes about their true feelings. But, as with all signals, context matters. Eye contact, or the lack thereof, is just one piece of the puzzle. Life is messy, and there are countless reasons why someone might struggle with maintaining eye contact. Stress, fatigue, personal insecurities, or cultural differences can all play a role. That's why it's essential not to jump to conclusions based on one interaction. So, what's the best approach? Observe, reflect, and if necessary, address. If their behavior bothers you or feels significant, consider having an open, non-confrontational conversation. Sometimes a simple question like, "Is everything okay?" can clear up misunderstandings or reveal hidden tensions. In the end, remember that while avoiding eye contact can be a telling sign, it's only one part of a much larger picture. Relationships thrive on clarity and mutual effort. Pay attention to the patterns, but don't let them define your self-worth. The people who truly value you will meet your gaze, not just with their eyes, but with their hearts as well. They keep conversations superficial. Conversation is one of the most powerful tools for building bridges, solving problems, and deepening connections. It's through meaningful dialogue that relationships thrive and grow. But what happens when the conversations remain stuck on the surface, never diving deeper into anything of real substance? It's frustrating, isn't it? And often, it's a sign that something might be off. Think about it. When we genuinely like or care about someone, we naturally want to open up, share stories, and learn about their world. It's how we create intimacy and foster trust. For example, you might discuss personal challenges, dreams, or even share a good laugh over a shared experience. But when someone keeps the dialogue limited to superficial topics like the weather or the latest TV shows, it can leave you feeling distant, even excluded. Let me share a story to illustrate this. There was a time when I tried to strengthen a friendship with someone I thought I was close to. Every time I attempted to steer our conversations toward meaningful topics, like our aspirations, values, or even personal struggles, they would quickly change the subject. Sometimes they'd give vague or non-committal responses that made it clear they weren't interested in engaging on a deeper level. At first, I chalked it up to them having an off day, but as these interactions repeated, a pattern became evident. They were keeping me at arm's length, and it was deliberate. Of course, it's important to remember that everyone has their reasons for keeping things superficial. Maybe they're naturally reserved, or perhaps they're dealing with personal issues that make it difficult for them to open up. However, when this behavior persists, especially in a relationship where you're putting in the effort to connect, it can be a signal that they're not as invested as you are. What should you do if you notice this? Start by observing the broader patterns. Is this superficiality consistent across all your interactions, or does it vary depending on the situation? If it's a recurring theme, it might be worth addressing. You could say something like, "I've noticed our conversations don't go beyond surface topics. Is there something on your mind?" This opens the door for them to share if there's an underlying reason. But let's also be real. Sometimes it's not about fixing things. Not every relationship is destined for depth, and that's okay. If you find that someone repeatedly keeps things shallow despite your efforts, it might be time to reconsider where you're investing your energy. After all, relationships should be mutually fulfilling. If the connection feels one-sided, it's perfectly fine to step back and focus on people who reciprocate your willingness to engage meaningfully. At the end of the day, life is too short for surface-level relationships that leave you feeling unfulfilled. Seek out those who value and nurture your connection. Surround yourself with people who make conversations feel like a true exchange of hearts and minds, rather than just words. You deserve that depth. They never reach out first. Have you ever felt like you're the only one keeping a relationship alive? It's an exhausting position to be in, and it's also one of the clearest indicators that someone might not value the connection as much as you do. If someone never reaches out to you first, like not even once unless absolutely necessary, it's worth pausing to assess the dynamic. Think about this. Relationships thrive on mutual effort. Whether it's a quick "how are you" text or a spontaneous invitation to catch up, those small gestures show that someone cares enough to keep the bond alive. When those gestures are entirely absent from one side, it's hard not to wonder. If you stopped putting in effort, would the relationship survive? Or would it simply fade into non-existence? Here's a helpful exercise. Take a bird's eye view of the relationship and ask yourself, if I stepped back right now, would they step forward? or would everything just fizzle out? The answer to that question can be incredibly revealing. If you realize you've been carrying the entire relationship on your shoulders, it might be time to take a step back and see what happens. If they don't pick up the slack, the reality is simple yet tough to accept. They either don't care enough or aren't genuinely interested in maintaining regular contact. And while that realization can sting, it's also freeing. Knowing where you stand allows you to redirect your energy toward relationships that are reciprocal and fulfilling. Of course, it's important to consider context. Life gets busy, and some people are naturally less proactive in initiating communication. But if their lack of effort is consistent and stands in stark contrast to how they treat others, it's a strong sign that the connection isn't a priority for them. Ultimately, relationships should never feel like a one-person show. You deserve bonds that feel balanced, where both parties contribute equally to nurturing the connection. So if you find yourself doing all the heavy lifting, it might be time to reevaluate and focus your energy on people who show they value you just as much as you value them. Your gut instinct is telling you something's off. Have you ever had a nagging feeling deep down that something about your relationship with someone just doesn't feel right? It's that quiet, persistent voice whispering, "Something's off here." That's your intuition. And more often than not, it's worth listening to. Sure, you might question yourself. Am I just overthinking? Could I be blowing this out of proportion? Those doubts are normal. And yes, sometimes we do create mountains out of molehills. But here's the thing. In many cases, those swirling worries in your mind are rooted in some kernel of truth that you might be too hesitant or confused to confront. When your gut tells you something's wrong, it's often picking up on subtle cues that your conscious mind hasn't fully processed yet. Maybe it's a tone in their voice, the way they avoid certain topics, or how their actions don't quite align with their words. Whatever the source, these small, accumulated signals add up to a bigger picture. Something isn't as it seems. Now, let's be clear. Just because your intuition is firing alarm bells doesn't automatically mean the person dislikes you. There could be a host of other explanations. Perhaps they're upset about a particular issue, dealing with their own stress, or simply too preoccupied to give you the attention you'd like. However, what's certain is that things aren't as seamless or harmonious as you'd want them to be. So, what do you do with this feeling? Start by giving it space to breathe. Instead of brushing it aside, use it as an opportunity to reflect. Ask yourself, what exactly feels off? Are there specific behaviors or patterns that are raising red flags? Clarity often begins with identifying the root of your discomfort. Once you've pinpointed the source, consider opening up a dialogue. A genuine, heartfelt conversation can be transformative. Frame your thoughts in a way that invites collaboration rather than confrontation. For instance, you might say, "I've been feeling like there's some distance between us lately. Is everything okay?" This approach gives them a chance to share their perspective and may uncover misunderstandings or unspoken grievances that can be addressed. However, it's also crucial to recognize that not every relationship can or should be fixed. Sometimes people are simply on different wavelengths, and no amount of effort will bridge the gap, and that's okay. Not every connection is meant to last, and accepting this can be incredibly freeing. At the end of the day, the relationships that truly matter are those that feel mutual, uplifting, and authentic. Focus on nurturing those bonds. Surround yourself with people who celebrate you for who you are, who value your presence, and who make the effort to meet you halfway. Trusting your gut isn't just about uncovering hidden truths, it's about honoring your own worth and prioritizing the relationships that enrich your life. So the next time your intuition whispers that something's off, don't ignore it. Listen, reflect, and take action. Because deep down, you already know what's best for you. Before we wrap up, I'd love to hear from you. What's your experience with spotting these subtle signs? Have you ever trusted your gut and been right about someone's feelings? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. I read every single one and can't wait to hear from you. And if you found this video insightful, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss out on content that helps you navigate relationships and life with confidence. Until next time, take care and stay empowered.